Let's go. Let's rock.
What's good, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Hit Confirm, episode 28 of the Hit Confirm. Man, and yes, I'm your one half of this meter usage, Casey, joined by Coach. What's up, man?
What's up, man? Hey, man, we're almost to the big 3-0. I know we like we just do these things as they come, but like it just feels kind of weird that that's kind of on the horizon. But we made it this far.
Yeah, as I said the number 28, and I was like, dang, it's getting to, it's catching up to how old I am.
Oh man, but I've been doing well. How about yourself, man?
Doing pretty good. Family members, like, I found out that some of them like caught COVID and everything, but the good thing is they're fighting through it and they're vaccinated. So it's so far so good. But other than that, doing pretty well. Can't I'm excited to talk about like, for like the patches and everything that came out and just the future and like and just comparison like the past and the present and the future in terms of like patches for fighting games. Because we usually talk about the psychology of like, the fighting games, but there's a big psychology that's or that adds to the psychology of that, and that's patches.
Oh man, like no matter what angle you look at it from, it just affects you. Like the idea that a patch is coming, or an idea that the patch is, the patch has come, and how that changes people, or you've been playing a game for a while and you don't know if it's getting another patch. It's so like there's so many aspects of it you can look at. So we're gonna try to touch as many as we can. But yeah, it's definitely the patch doesn't just affect the game systems and characters. It affects how these players operate in these games.
Yeah, man. But before we get into that, I just want to ask you. So, like, what games Have you been playing lately? That's actually like not fighting games. I'm just curious.
Actually, I picked up the Ace Attorney that just got localized a couple months back, and because I really want to play that, and Capcom finally put it out to the West, and so I've been playing that. I've been enjoying that. It's different sets of characters, but the themes are still there. It's still the same good fun. Um,
Nice.
Other than that, I haven't been playing much else outside of as far as single player games go. How about yourself?
I've been putting it off for years because I've heard so many bad things about it, but I also love it. In those, I've been playing two games actually, but the first one is Kingdom Hearts 3. I have some friends that didn't finish the game because they fell asleep on it and everything like that. And I'm slowly going through it, and I understand what people have said about it. But yeah, I'm playing that and Tetris. I'm trying to get back into Tetris because there's a huge update that came out for that game,
Which
and
version?
Tetris Effect.
Ah, okay, okay.
Yep, they added multiplayer, and I haven't played the game since it first released. I like played it, beat it, and that was it. So I never really played like the extra modes or anything. So it's like I have a fresh new. It's like Tetris Effect 2 for me. So
Hmm. Okay.
yeah, and there's another game I'm gonna get to, which is kind of like in the same. I did the same thing too. It's No Man's Sky. I played that on release, beat it, never went back to it. So I know once I go back to that game, it's gonna be a whole new thing. So
Actually, actually, since you brought that game up, I did turn that game on 2 or 3 weeks ago because I had a new graphics card. I finally installed it, and that was one of the games I could not play before. Now I can play it pretty smoothly. So I wanted to test. And I was like, oh, this is actually pretty fun and interesting. So that's something I definitely plan to kind of roll back around to at some point.
oh, nice. Does it have a crossplay? Do you
I'm
think?
not. I don't know. I've been playing it on Steam, so I don't know what the multiplayer is like. I just played the beginning of it, but yeah, I like the way it looks, and I just like exploring and that kind of open sand world kind of concept. So I plan to get into it after a bit.
Okay, nice. But yeah, so today we're here to talk about patches, you guys, and also just not just patches, but like game updates, because like things games in the past before like this generation, we had to deal with like before we had to deal with patches, we had to deal with just a new like literally a sequel of the game coming out, or just a whole new physical version of the game coming out.
Yeah, yeah. Especially like in the arcade days, before like console fighters were really hitting. Like, 'cause you have like different versions of VF2. So, and then like it's funny if you turn on Xbox, you can actually play either of the versions that came out for Virtua Fighter 2. But
Oh, wow.
yeah, yeah, but yeah. So that the concept itself of the game's updating is not new, but the way it's been delivered and the way it's now streamlined and very much expected, that's what's new.
Yeah, it's it's a lot of unexpectancy for me on a lot of angles. But what I want to get into was we got a couple people that responded to our this episode, which I'm very happy with because I just love to like do things like this.
Yeah,
And I'll give it shout out to Dogi Sandwich. Shout out to him. Uh, he's one of the most loyal people I know in the FGC that just like is pretty cool, man. Pretty insightful person to talk to about pretty much like a lot of things too. So
yeah,
shout out
yeah.
to him. But yeah, I right like I said when we were talking about like before games got patched, there's a there was a point, for instance, I'll say for me, my experience, uh Street Fighter 4 and Marvel 3. And those games were, I guess you could say those are like they had patches, right?
Yeah, in a sense, not like the ones we really know today, but yeah,
Yeah, like their patches were like, okay, if you already own the game, you can most likely upgrade it, minus Street Fighter 4 vanilla.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
if you already own the game, you can buy the upgrade, or you can get the physical copy.
Though Marvel was not an upgrade, that was a new game.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But yeah, so like so for Street Fighter 4's case, I think that's the reason why we didn't see patches as frequently, or like updates or so as frequently for that for like the game, because they were also still dishing out physical copies.
I think is that, and what I would attribute it to is the fact that it was still heavily an arcade game, right? So that's where that was its origins. So they updated it through the arcade and like, okay, well here's these new characters and here's all these updates. Well, here's your new game to PlayStation 3 and 360. There you go. It,
Yeah, it was definitely based off the arcade version. Yeah, you're right, completely right.
until the very end where Ultra came out and then that got ported later. But yeah, until then we had to like look at like behind the shoulder cam footage of Yun and Yang when we heard they were coming out. You saw these blurry characters like, yo, that was those guys from Third Strike, and we had so we were like just thirsty for info and stuff. But yeah, in a sense, yeah, it was versions because you didn't have to upgrade at some points. You could still play people like who had like 20 like I think I think like Super could still play online and AE people could still play online, and it was like some weird version select thing or
Oh
something.
yeah, that was a thing. You could still play like people who still had like the last version.
Yeah,
You didn't
yeah,
have to upgrade right away.
yeah. So you could go back and get your zero frame Rose Ultra if you really wanted to, but most people move on. So like when Street Fighter Super came out, nobody was really on vanilla, and so like unlike patches where you can't really go back in a sense. You could go back then, but most people didn't. I'm sure there's like a diehard vanilla Street Fighter 4 community out there. There always is. No matter what game you're talking about, there's somebody out there that's like, yeah, this is totally my jam. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I think what like kind of forced people to kind of like really force them to move on with something that you kind of see today was is tournaments. That's what kind of like forced people to kind of like push them to go forward, because most people, they're gunning the play, and most people are playing like on the tournament patches and stuff like that. So yeah, when it comes to Street Fighter 4, I think the way they went about it back then wasn't too bad. Um, was it year? It wasn't yearly though, right? I can't remember.
It was just. some of it, some like I think the time span between like AE and Super was somewhat short, but my memory
Yeah,
from back that time is pretty blurry. But yeah, it was just one of those things like when they updated the arcade, then everyone was like, "Oh, when's the next version coming out?" Because I think originally, I think it may have been like the base Super version. I don't think they or no AE version. I think they were debating to bring that to console because that was before they were just like really trying to package it, and I think they realized that the market in the West was kind of emerging, so they just like, yeah, we got to keep releasing these. But I think
yeah.
they were kind of on the fence about it. So yeah, it's a weird concept, but like I guess as a player, it was just one of those things where people just like were just hungry for the next thing, and it kind of set the tracks or foundation for
Oh,
what people are doing now. Where they're like,
yeah.
yeah, is this game gonna get upgraded again with more characters? You know?
I'm happy you mentioned that because during the time of Marvel, I'm sorry, before during the time where Street Fighter was, having its updates and everything, Marvel was creeping along,
Hmm.
and people started to get those same expectations that you mentioned with Marvel. So you do you remember when Vanilla Marvel came out?
Yeah, yeah. I bought and played that.
Uh, I remember I went to the EB game or EB Games or GameStop near me, and it was like late. It was 12, the midnight release, and so many people were there, and there was like a mini tournament, and I wanted to stay, but I had class the next day, and I was like, I'm gonna download this, play like maybe like 30 minutes of it, or download it or whatever, and that's it. But yeah, just that it's funny because that game, um, it took a straight year after that for Marvel 3 to Ultimate Marvel to come out.
Yeah, it
Maybe
was.
even
Yeah, it
it
wasn't
was
really that long, right?
yeah, it was pretty short. But here's the interesting thing, and I wish I can find like this article or something.
Hmm.
But I remember the biggest cries for Marvel 3 was it was such a fast-paced game and such an aggressive game. There was like no like way to play lame. People were really like upset about that. And this was like I think one of the like first cases I remember of Capcom being very adamant about like responding to people's needs and like cries about like the game itself.
Yeah, you had that boy Sentinel out there with 1.1 million hitting the hard drive, and
Hey man,
people would not shut up about it. And guess what? What happened in what happened in Ultimate?
he got look.
Yeah,
I played.
what is it up now? 800,000, something like that.
Yeah, he got the big can got nerfed, man. He didn't have to. He's just a big can, man. Wolverine was literally walking on him. It sucked, but it's funny because I do remember. I don't know. I've always wanted to find this article to this day, where they mentioned how they wanted to buff or add like the concept of like making better like the zoning characters, the zoning style better in Marvel series. I remember them mentioning that in interviews and also an article. And once Ultimate Marvel 3 came out and I want to say the booklet came out and everything, they pretty much was like very there was pushing the new characters like Hawkeye, Doctor Strange, like all those characters. They was pushing them to be like yeah, these are new characters, but they're also kind of like more zoning type. They can use their zoning in unique ways too. So when I saw that, I was like, "Oh snap!" They're listening. This is the first time like Capcom is like listening to fans like this, like kind of like almost in a real time moment, and you don't have to wait too long. So to see that was pretty interesting, and then it got kind of out of hand because later on, the zoning became too powerful with like characters like Morgan. But people forget about that, man. They like people forget like they forget like when they go to cry for something and then it happens and they're like, wait, this is too powerful.
I mean, the concept of be careful what you wish for is very real, because Wesker just kind of fell off, and a whole lot of things changed in that game. And it's funny you brought up Marvel, because like a few years in, people were like, because I think this is like right before Street Fighter V was announced, so it's in that little time period, like a year, people were like, "Where's the next Marvel update?" They were dying for a new Marvel game, like not a new Marvel game, quote unquote, but a new like version update to Marvel 3. Because this is before they just like issued out the patches because they want to see that boy Sentinel back on top. They want to see like new characters, and so like they were just clamoring Capcom. And then I think at the time Capcom had lost the license, I want to say, because they took like Marvel Origins and stuff off the store, and I think Marvel 2 off of the PSN and Xbox Live store. And so like that was like one of those examples where people were just hungry for more and they didn't know if they were going to get more, and Capcom just kind of silently moved on. And I only wanted to bring that up because Dogi Savage, yeah, you mentioned him earlier because he was like, yeah, what about those games where people have been playing them, they didn't die hard about them, but they don't know if the developers are ever gonna like support them again, via balance update, new characters or whatever. And like Marvel, I think there's a big glaring example of that where you had like a community that was like really hungry for the game. They loved it and they wanted to see more. And as time goes by, obviously people who are playing it now are still, they just love the game, whether it got updated or not. But at the time, the fan frenzy was like at its peak. Capcom didn't bother with that, and so people were just kind of like, you had the people who was like, I want more, but if they're not gonna update it, I'll go to the newest thing. And then you had the people who were just like, I love Marvel 3 regardless. And so there's always that thing. There's always that thing. Like even people who are passionate about it, they still want novelty and new things to play with and explore. And so you kind of see that in modern games. Like MK11 is actually the opposite, where NRS is like, yeah, well, after this patch, this is over. And I think Team Ninja did the same for DOA. They were like, all right, this is our last patch. Buy up all your DLC before the licenses run out, and we're not gonna update this anymore. And so you get that sense of finality with those games. You're like, this is the game we're gonna be playing for years and years and years, if that's the game you love, obviously. But other games, you don't really know. Like if Grand Blue was not getting another season, or Sam Show not getting another season, you just kind of gotta play that out and fill it out, and then eventually, you're gonna realize, oh, this is the last patch. But like some of those games are in that little blurry zone right now.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned the license because the it wasn't. I think some people at that time blamed it on like Capcom, and believe it or not, Capcom actually had low key had a new they had an update that was gonna come for Marvel 3 that had rumor had it has it, and I remember I don't want to mention his name, but a certain commentator has said this before that there was going to be like huge adjustments to the game. Characters like Virgil was going to be like quote unquote normalized and stuff like that. So I think yeah, it was with the as a former Marvel player, and I still like watching Marvel today, and I think it's an awesome game. But as somebody who like wanted to see like that update for that game, it would have changed the landscape of like having that one more update to make that fight like to make the fighting game perfect. That like particular fighting Marvel fighting game perfect. Because a lot of Marvel players saw that too. There was like one more update. Like even the Marvel players that still play it today, they're like, yeah, I really think that like one more update could have made this game like really, really, really like extremely special. And it's extremely special to them because they still play it, right?
Right.
But it would have been like on another like it would have set the precedence for like future games to come out and get them to a point where they're patched for like it's like almost in that perfect spot. So yeah, Marvel actually they had one more patch left that was going to come out, but they never really like talked about it.
Hmm.
And they did have like an adjustment patch, and it, it, I remember because if you guys follow Maximilian or anybody who like follows Marvel games, he's made tons of videos of like that last patch and how it like hurt people because all it was to I think the last patch was remove it was like adjusting like removing something from the game and that was it in terms of like online or something. But yeah, it wasn't anything significant, but people thought it was and their hopes were up. But like yeah, man, like patches like for games like Marvel where they're like it's still has the game still have flaw. Like you're always gonna have a flawed like fighting game. That's one thing I want to get across. is no matter how many times you patch any game, honestly, it's gonna be flawed, especially for like a fighting game where it's down to like so meticulous ways. But it's you can still like make it to that darn near perfect gameplay style where it's like that's what people who were like looking at Marvel to do. They was like, man, it's just one more away, like because everybody understood the concepts of like certain characters and where they could go, but they couldn't they weren't fleshed out. They couldn't unlock their potential because the game, like the overall state of the game wouldn't let them. You see like there was potential there for these characters, but it's like it's in those moments you kind of become like a mini dev yourself because you've played the game for years, and you kind of see what characters, what the direction they were going with the devs going with the characters, and now you're like, okay, I see where they're going with this. I'll hop on along and try to see, and hopefully there's an update comes out and then like fleshes out the character even more for them to use their tools and stuff like that better and more often. But yeah, one game you kind of saw it happen at the last minute with during that time, and I went to Evo for this game, believe it or not, was Street Fighter Cross Tekken 2013 version. That game, we all know what the first version of Street Fighter Cross Tekken was. It was very awful. Gyms was made the system very like, I don't know, very kind of convoluted or somewhat, and kind of like just ruined the system overall. And a lot of characters were like just overpowered. You had infinites, all that stuff. But then 2013 came out and it just made that game to the point for where everybody wanted it, which is like the whole cast is pretty much playable at a high level. You can like, it's you're not forced to like, when you go to character select screen, you're not forced to look at a certain section. And that's what the goal, I think, like when it comes to patches, that's the goal that a lot of people like agree on. Even the people that like disagree with certain characters being buffed or nerfed, that's like the overall goal. But yeah, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, that was, I think that was a perfect, or that was an example that was set, but it was kind of low key because a lot of people went away from it. But that was a perfect example that was set for like, hey, look, we see games that can be like come out very bad, but it can end up being like perfect and people's potential favorite fighting game of all time. And that's so now I want to kind of like segue into like kind of how like the modern games are with that,
Hmm.
because you're seeing it kind of happen in real time with DBFZ. um Not to go too deep into the DBFZ patch because that patch is huge,
All right.
but it's that patch allowed it finally got to the point for where players like, so a lot of people in the beginning asked for asking for it like assists, all that stuff, right? But we all know what DBFZ did in the beginning. Well, we all know like it was already like a pretty busted game in the beginning. Like any game, not just fighting game, but any game when it releases busted. But as someone who was like very watching closely, not just the game as like a fan itself, but like how the devs were like programming the game and stuff, I kind of got a gist of the philosophy of where they wanted to go. But also at the same time, it was you could tell they were like listening to people. Like they were definitely were not disregarding people. It may seem like they were disregarding people when it comes to Goku Black, but every other, like the whole system and characters and stuff like that, they weren't disregarding people. But it's just they had this philosophy that they stuck to, and that a lot of like a lot of devs, like they have this philosophy, this this fundamental, or I want to say like the blueprint of how the game should be overall near the end game. And what DBFZ is now compared to what it used to be, it's more fleshed out. Of course, the variety, DBFZ kind of always had that variety as they added more characters and stuff, but it's more dynamic in its ways. the play. Even I'm even hearing people who've played Marvel saying DBSE is now like in that Marvel state, and like in terms of like being creative. And but at the same time, they took that they if you notice, they kind of told you how the game was going to progress with DLC characters. And I thought that was like the smartest idea. Now, not back then, I don't think that would have worked. Because a game releases and that's it. There's no patch, that's it, whatever.
Right.
And you kind of saw that with like in the past with Arxis games. They was slowly trying to do that, but they messed up a lot. Like they were doing it with like, Blaze Blue is a perfect example, right? They'll come out with a DLC character and be super powerful. Um, you have the pay to win. We all know with KOF 13 DLC character is super powerful, right? But those games were still in that state of like we can't patch it right away. You kind of have to deal with them in the state that they're in. So, but DBFZ started at such a basic bare bones level to the point where like, yeah, if we do have an overpowered character, at least the power level of the character would not be like it won't be complicated to understand to a point where you just don't want to play no more. Like some people did like drop off DBFZ, but like for the most part, a lot of people did still stick with that game. And so yeah, this current patch, you see them like they're like they mastered that. I feel with the from last season to this season, they mastered the whole like DLC characters toned down a little bit, but not like weak. We're gonna buff all these other characters that everybody like said that should be buffed, but we're not gonna make them overpowered. What we're gonna do, we're not gonna give them a whole lot of new moves and stuff like that. We're just gonna see what you guys been doing over the years and seeing how to buff the characters like that. So, for example, if you have a move like a good example, Blue Goku. He has like this EX tackle, right, where he goes from one side of the screen to the other. What usually in fighting games, when you have like a wall bounce, right, there's always these weird situations where like they'll bounce off the wall, and it's like, depending on the spacing and the judgment, hopefully you get the confirm right. Before like this patch, and I want to say even before kind of like the last patch too, last season, that move was kind of like wasn't consistent on like getting the conversions and stuff after. And you can tell that was the point of the move. It's like hit like a cross up, pseudo cross up, and you can get an easy conversion off of it. But it's a lot of things like that in DBFZ, a lot of inconsistency like that in the past couple of seasons that they were like slowly patching in and slowly catching on to. They were adding consistency to the game. And they just did that across the board. And then characters that you think that didn't get buffed actually did get buffed through the mechanics of the game, like Super Brawly, and because he's like one of the rare characters that has like OTG. So now like there's a lot of situations where you can like pick up. So like the way they structured that game in terms of like seasons and patches was so smart because they knew who their audience were. They knew like it was probably like the biggest audience they probably had for a fighting game. So it was like, all right, we want to try to please everybody, but we got to start off small, you know. And then they work. It snowballed, and so now it's like a game where it's like it seems crazy, but if you told me, look, there's something that's like that's unbeatable, I would like, no, there's a lot of stuff that can beat this situation. And I think that was the whole philosophy. That's the whole philosophy of DBFZ. You see people get frustrated at that game. A lot of people who don't play it, it's because or they don't understand the fact that the whole philosophy is to never feel like you're down and out. That's why they took away stuff like, the infamous like level 3 Oki setups with Bardock and GT Goku and all that.
Snap
It's because
Oki.
yeah, they took that out because they like it's rewarding when you get that stuff and it shows like I get my turn and blah blah blah. But they wanted to show like, hey, this it's more to a fighting game than just Oki, right? And I caught on to that real early. I was all right, cool. Let's see what happens because the design of the game when you first get your knock when the game came out, you saw slide knockdown. You already knew once you saw slide knockdown and there was different wake ups. You already knew that most of the Oki in the game is not going to be all that quote unquote real or whatever, right?
Right.
So right off the bat, that was them telling you, look, we're trying to give people a fighting chance, no matter what situation you're in. You always can think of a way to get out. You never want to feel hopeless. So that's why, like I said, they took out the OTG, they took out the snapbacks, and they make it so every situation you can turn to your like favor or something like that. And I think like not a lot of fighting games can get away with that. But yeah, it's I hope I didn't go off like on a rant there. I just wanted to really explain that about the philosophy of DBOZ because I really get it. I really understand that game in terms of like what they wanted to do from like a development point.
Okay, yeah, that was quite a bit, like from the Street Fighter Cross Tekken to DBSZ, and yeah, you do see those two philosophies. I guess kind of the similar philosophies, and I guess my take on, I guess going back to Cross Tekken was that we even if the game updated, we never really got to see it fleshed out by the players, which was kind of a shame because we did see the potential in it. But I guess one thing that crossed my mind through all of that was a lot of it is ultimately like, well, depending on who you ask, right? Because like you say, like removing the Oki and then making no hopeless situation. Some people will scream to the stars. That's the most amazing thing. And there's other people that say, well, no. And the one thing that I guess I would say to that would be like, unlike before where you had versions of games, and this is something I've talked about with a few people. Well, like if you really like Vanilla Street Fighter, it's a guy, just blowing you up for 80%, that you can go back and do that right now, right? Even
Yeah,
if you had nobody to play with. But if you really, really love the Snap Oki, meta of what was it, season two?
yeah, yeah, season two.
And if you just really love that game, you can never go back and play it, right? No matter how much you loved it, no matter how much it was the most fun version for you. So that's always something interesting I've been thinking about as far as like the old school versus the new school stuff. Because like you can go back and play Second Impact, you can go back and play New Generation, but you can't go back and play Street Fighter Season Two. You can't go back and play Grand Blue Season One. Like those games are gone forever. Even if it was just because these seasons aren't always just like new characters, right? Because sometimes like they change the rules of the universal how the characters work. Like in season one of Grand Blue, they took away a lot of the horizontal moves power, and they made it so that you can't just like rushing moves don't give knockdown a big advantage anymore. And DBFZ, you literally just talked about three metas, right? During your conversation, right? So you can essentially say those are three different games, quote unquote, right? To some degree. And if you like one more than the other, you always have to be kind of playing the latest one. Not talking about like any hacking tricks to get your PlayStation locked on some version or whatever, but just in general, like talking about Guilty Gear now, right? Because it has a patch coming up right now, which is just trimming down some characters and stuff like that. But it's not really changing the whole game. But the one in October, I think they said they were gonna like do system changes and really dig deep into what the characters can and can't do. And so they're probably gonna look to see what their universal rule, like what you were saying with DBSZ, where they were ultimately building it up to see what they wanted the characters to do and how they wanted them to operate over a long term, right? And you can kind of see that pattern emerging in Strive where they're like, we got to make sure all the characters 6P can do this and all that stuff. It's
Yeah, it, it's crazy because it's funny that you mentioned like how the some characters because there's a caveat to like these patches, like right, like a perfect example I've heard people talk to me about like where a character changes completely is a lychee in Blaze Blue.
hmm
I remember correctly. She's like totally a different character in each version of Blaze Blue, and that can like really like unmotivate people to like play the game and stuff like that. Which it has in the past. Like I know people that literally quit Blaze Blue because like she was completely different, and they put in a lot of work with that character. And like when
yeah,
you put a lot of time, and then next thing you know, a patch comes out, and like you got to switch everything up. All your time feels like it's wasted. So there's definitely a problem with that. Like there's definitely other side of this sorted with that. But again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying with like trying to understand, not just like don't not being selfish on like when you're approaching a game, when you're playing a game, you got to also think that other people are playing, right?
Right.
And then once you start to think that way, you also have to think, okay, if other people are playing this game, they're going to try to have different styles, but also at the same time, there's people who are creating this game. There's not one person playing this one character in this one game. So what it is for competitive players, we decide to tunnel vision and try to go. We get comfortable with defined meta with these patches, right?
Right.
So again, I'll mention DBFZ. The first defined meta in that game was the Oki, level 3 Oki, run that all day. And that was for a competitive player that makes you super comfortable. Get into your position, your power position, everything. Then that got taken out. It's like people say, okay, I got to start over, which is exhausting. And then some people left the game. Understandable. So now the people that stuck to it is, all right, what's the defined meta? What's the new one? Oh, snap. Cool. I'll start doing that. I'll lab that, put in time and work with that, get better. Bam. That gets patched out. So now people are really frustrated. They're like, dude, come on. What do you guys want me to do? And that's when people ask that question, that's when I'm really like, I asked that question early on, like when the game first come out, but I don't look at one aspect of the game. I'm like, okay, how can, because, well, what is it called? Win condition, right?
Right.
Um, People don't really look at, when you look at, when you hear about win condition, we talk about it every now and then, but a lot of people don't really like go in, I guess, take it for heart or word, or like what is a win condition. And it can be like multiple things, right? It could be how your character wins, how the within a matchup, how does the system let your character win within a matchup. There's a lot of factors that count in the win condition, for fighting games, right?
Right.
It can make it very uniquely, as you've seen with fighting games such as KI and Guilty Gear. You can have like unique character ways to have win conditions, but overall, there's like not just one way, and that's what I think what a lot of people, when they ask that question, that's what, like, they're pretty much, the answer is right in front of their face. It's like, look, you don't have to play the game this way, because if you do, you're actually not making it. It seems fun being like, conditioning and doing all that over and over again, but in reality, you're tricking your brain to like be like, yeah, all right, doing this over again, it's not all that fun. And also, again, I have to mention this, and I know some people might not like this, but it's good for the spectators to have variety in how people win.
That could be an episode in itself. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're not gonna dig deep to it. Dig deep on that one. But yeah, again, it's like again, it's just gonna end up being what someone wants when they turn on a game, which can be wildly different. It could be something like something really silly or something really serious, anything. So
But
it's
I just
just,
want people to keep that in the back of their mind when they ask that question, like when they get frustrated and they're like, what do you want me to do? It's like, if you really like fighting games and you really like labbing, finding new stuff, yeah, it sucks. You got to kind of do it again. But then, like, once you find out, like, how can I go about this a new way? It's just, I don't know. For me as a fighting game player, I still find that pretty fun. It's just like, still finding out different ways to win.
yeah, I mean, yeah, people will find their fun like in different ways, and I am one of somebody who does find a lot of fun in training mode. But yeah, I can definitely see both sides of that. Where like you said, someone put in the time, they discovered it, and, they optimized it, and then they said it's just a swift moment, and it's not there anymore. And so like yeah, so I can see both sides of that. And then if you open it to discovery, it's not so bad. But if you're somebody who just likes getting set in your ways, and it's he probably not going to be satisfied with the game until it does hit his final patch. And some people don't like that. They don't like the constant change, especially if they have to like change how they play their character or change how they have to approach the system, and especially if it happens in ways they don't like. Like if the game was like high damage and they like optimizing the damage, they're like, well, we're gonna change that. We're gonna make the character's control options better, but we're gonna remove the high burst damage. But that's what they signed up for. And if what they signed up for is not there anymore, understandably, they're gonna walk away and look for something else, and they can't go back to that game that they signed up for. So it's what they call a double-edged sword in the business.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all due to, and it comes down to preference at the end of the day and how you feel about the game. So I'm not trying to force people to do anything. Just like just trying to should tell you guys like I understand both sides as well. We both understand both sides as well. We just was giving our opinions out there.
For sure.
So but yeah, there is do want to hear some of these questions that was asked for us. So like for Jushido, how often do you guys like your games patched, and how often do you think they should be patched? Um, you want to hit this one first?
Sure, sure. So my personal preference would be, after a good long time of the game being out, even if there's like really strong stuff or really good stuff, like if it's not like obviously, like this character presses one button and you do 100% or something really buggy stuff, I prefer the game to just kind of go on and on, people to play it and explore it, and really look at it, and then really go back and look at what they changed. And with the way they have the seasons set up for some of these games, it kind of ends up being kind of perfect in that regard, where they release these characters over time, and then at the end of the season you get a patch, and at the start of a season you get a patch or whatever, right? And so I think that's kind of a decent pace for the way the games are nowadays. Um, I don't, because I know a lot of people they want stuff kind of now,
Yeah.
when like this character has been beating you up, or your character doesn't have options strong in this area, and you want to, I want it fixed now. And like even when I sit down and play a character where I don't feel like they perform very well, I still want to see how they work out. And even if I never change my opinion on it, I want it to be the end result. Because you said something really good, is that you're not the only person playing this game. And so like with this current Strive patch, a lot of people are like, yeah, how did they update this character to do this? And, they don't play those characters, and they don't think about what those characters deal with across the cast. They think about, this is what this character does to me. Why would you make that better? Or why would you give them this and stuff like that? So like that's why I don't like, even if I feel my character's weak, I'm still exploring, and I'll point out what I think should be changed, but I'm not in a
Right.
rush for any patch. It's like, this is what I think, and then what I think may not even be very accurate, or it might be incredibly biased. We're only humans, so I will say that once a season or twice a season, getting a start after they kind of collected that data, is where I would draw the line. What about you?
I like the way that kind of like how Tekken, I think DBFZ, pretty much Bandai. I like how they go about it, and kind of like how Street Fighter go about it. It goes basically every year, right?
Right.
So it gives you enough time to like kind of marinate. Of course, the quick patches are like the bug fixes, so like that goes in and come out. But yeah, it gives you time to like sit, figure things out, what's good, what's bad, and that's it. Because the thing is, if you do patches too quickly, the devs are only human too, right? So they might mess up on a patch and cause a new bug and cause something else to go crazy or whatever. So like by them just like having, because they have like when they do these patches, before they do these patches, I know they have like a draft or something, right? And they have like a direction they want to go with, like the patches and the characters. So they when they finally get to that point, they're like, all right, it's released, bam, let it marinate for a year, and I like that. So, but to like disrupt that from maybe like, I guess one game that I would like to see, it doesn't seem like it's being patched every year. I don't know actually how it's patched,
Hmm.
but Grand Blue, I don't know how often it's patched. It seems like it's patched like every 6 months, not a
Us-
year.
It's usually what happens when a character comes out. They'll do miscellaneous changes. Like they had one big patch, and that was before Belial came out, where they kind of like made their plans for how the cast operates, and then they introduced a
Oh, I
character that
remember that
doesn't that,
patch.
that does not operate on that plan, and so everyone went wild. But yeah, so I think when they do a pat when they add a character, they do miscellaneous changes. They don't do s- outside of that one big patch. They don't generally do like wide sweeping changes, I don't think.
Okay. Yeah, so I think I just like the year to year base patch. It's refreshing after, because you get the best of both worlds. At least for me, like where it's like that old school style. You learn, you deal with it. Shades on, deal with it, meme, and then after that, once the patch comes out, because then it brings more attention to the game. It makes people it's like, yo, this game is not dead, blah blah blah, all that. It brings that hype back when after the year is, and then like you have like the whole announcements of like the season and special stuff going on. So it gives people time to like sit, think, and marinate, and just like enjoy the game for what it is, which is the point.
Yeah, and that kind of segues into the next part of Jusido's note here, which he said like the patches and the community's attention span and interest, and yeah, there's a big thing right now for sure, where when a game comes out, it's been out for a while, and people have not seen a sign of a patch, or the company has not mentioned that something is coming down the line. People start thinking, is this game over? Is it time to move on to the next thing? Are they making the next game? Are we moving on to the next thing? Like, I'm ready to see some. It's almost like every game has like a what is it they call the intravenous IV, and they have to constantly replace the drip bags.
Holy crap!
That's how fighting games feel to me right now. And I feel like you still have you like despite what I'm saying, you still have those that core of people who are gonna play it regardless, updates or not.
Right.
But the general audience, they're looking for novelty, and that's just human nature. When we play something or do anything, we're not gonna read, the same book every day. We're not gonna watch just the same TV show. We will, watch other stuff. But or we want a new season of that new show. Stuff like that. So I get it. I get it. But it's definitely that attitude right now where people are like, like is there another season of Sam Show? Should I be playing that? Is Grand Blue is Seox the last character? Should I be playing that? Or no, it's God, what's that girl's name? The one that's upcoming, I forgot. Um, is it Vera? But whatever. Yeah. So it's like, is she gonna be last character? Is that it? And am I gonna have to play Grand Blue anymore? And a lot of people kind of put their stock on that, and so I don't really fault it, but you're starting to notice it a thing, and I guess that's why these companies are being more aggressive about making season passes and plans and other things like that. So like they're trying to keep people as interested as possible. But I feel like that's also why there's not as many fighting games that are out anymore. It's because it's easier to build your base game and then have people buy stuff for it for the next 5 years than to have like three simultaneous games out. But that's just my opinion on that.
Yeah. That when I read the patches and community intention question, the first thing that comes to my mind is it's a race, like in like the race to beginning to the end, and then like when is the end? How much content should I be putting out? Like you said, is the question that everybody's always asking: is this game dead because we don't have a patch? All that, and then which it's honestly as a if you're somebody who really likes like just playing fighting games in general and you're part of the FGC, you really shouldn't be asking that question too much because like coach like you mentioned, you're always going to have somebody to play. You might have to go a little bit more out your way, but even then uh this generation of games online are like way better than like we mentioned the last games we mentioned where you can barely find people in those games because why those games like are bad online or whatever and stuff. So
Hmm.
but you can still find people to play those games even online now, I guess, because you have parsec and offline events like Tampa Never Sleeps for Marvel. So like you will always have somebody to play. You may not have like the content creation like there off frequently. You may not have like the huge pot bonus, or you may not have like the huge national or international tournaments that's going on, but you'll still have that like audience there and all the players there, right?
Yeah.
So don't I I don't like the narrative like once a patch is like once it's near the end of the game's lifespan, quote unquote, that means the game is dead. Like, no, I just maybe if you're a casual, yeah, if you're a casual, yeah, the game is completely dead for you. Like, you're probably never going back to that fighting game if you're a casual. But as a if you just like legit just like fighting games, period, and you play it frequently, yeah, don't worry about that.
Yeah, it definitely depends on what your level of engagement with the game is, or in general. But yeah, it's you'll always be able to find somebody to play. But if you signed up for having like, like like a party when you get online, and then yeah, you're gonna have to move from game to game. This is how it is.
Yeah,
But
it's how yeah the nature of life. You
yeah.
move trends, you move on.
So I guess the next one's the bad patches. I guess the closest thing to a bad patch in recent times would be what we mentioned earlier is the Grand Blue one when Belial came out and they gutted the rest of the cast while keeping him kind of in the old school rules of the game.
Dude,
And so
when
a
I
whole
out
bunch of people went wild over that.
out so I didn't play the Belial patch that much. Actually, I don't think I played it at all. I played the patch like right before that one. I don't know. I just remember Ladiva getting nerfed, and I was like, yeah, all right, I'm done. I was definitely that guy. I was like, yeah, because I didn't play Grand Blue as much, but I still it was installed on my PC, and I would still go on there, hop on there every now and then,
Yeah.
and I had fun. I think Grand Blue is a really fun game. It's a really good game. But once like I heard they got that like sort of Blaze Blue extend version of Grand Blue, I was like, I don't know, man. The game is already a slow paced game. I can't take them taking out like all the options out, but they did, and they gave it out. They gave all the energy and options to Bilal.
Yeah, I think they ultimately smoothed it out, and I think it was just like you had a character that was operating off those same rules from before with the new rules they have, and so it was like a big clash. But you said something I'm gonna bring up in a bit because it's actually something that's definitely on my mind with patches. But see the final state of recent games, and I feel like we kind of talked about that where where the games just kind of reached their natural point eventually, or you got an NRS situation where they're like, we're done. This is your Mortal Kombat,
Yeah,
11 from now until the end of time, and so you could just like, if you're dedicated, you just go in there, and the benefit of that is right. The game at that point is static. You can get to all your encyclopedic knowledge, and it'll always apply. You can always build on
that's
that
true.
foundation, and it'll never get knocked away. So that's how games like ST and the you know Samurai Showdown 5 Special and all the other old arcade games are now, right? Because when you picked up those games, they're not going to change, but you can sit down, discover, and build and get other people's knowledge. And it's like this thing where the strategies and stuff are built over like a long time. And so the games end up being that's where a lot of the deep gameplay comes from. A lot of those games just being around for so long without changing. And so people are able to like learn the core of the game and all the little edge cases and just really just like learn as much as possible.
Yeah, they patched the game with their minds with situations. No,
You got you going on next levels.
yeah, they galaxy brain patch with their
Oh,
mind. It's like, oh, I'm used to this version of this game. Let me like flesh out because I know everything. But no, you're right. Like, that's how I am with like, I guess I'm guilty of this with Guilty Gear, right? Guilty Gear Plus R. We we all know the main ingredient for that game is BS, is straight bullshit. We all know that. That's always there. But you get past that, it's like, okay, like I know what game I'm playing, what I've gotten into. So there's a lot of yeah, there's that comfort there. That's why, like I said earlier, I understand the people that like when they leave a game because they got patched because they got so comfortable with it. So kind of like I guess that I could mention like all right, kind of go into like Strive with like Strive's patch, right? Or
hmm
not patch, but like when Strive came out as a game. I was like, oh, I don't agree with this and blah blah blah. But then I read like the recent patches of Strive, and for the record, like I guess from like my point of view with like they did exactly what I was hoping they would do, which is like not over buff her, not like touch her like that,
hmm
just give her movement, make her like be able to get from point A to point B a little bit quicker because she's a character with a very unique play style, and for her to not have that movement is very fundamentally flawed like that, and to be slow. So I'm happy they fixed that.
Oh, we'll
Um,
see. They didn't give us no numbers, man.
that's true. But if it's anything like how it was before the beta, because there's videos you can see online when they're doing the showcase how
hmm
she was moving. If it's anything like that, then that's which I'm assuming it's probably going to be like that. Then that's good. That's perfect because that's how she should have been in the first place. People are saying Because I know you've seen like that infamous horizontal chemical love tweet.
Yeah.
People are like upset that her ACL didn't get buffed. I want to get this straight to people. Honestly, I would like ACL to be buffed. As a person who's played her in past Gifted Gear games, I would love her ACL to be buffed. For me personally, I would probably play Strive religiously if her ACL was buffed, but I don't think it needs to be buffed. Main reason why is because, like I said, the philosophy of the game. They want you to understand that hey, there's this move. This is how you beat it. Bam. Um, it's kind of obvious, like like the way the move works. It's like it's a very quick move, by the way. Comes out very quickly. She can whiff punish it damn near half screen, full screen away, right? So it's a pretty powerful move in that aspect. Yeah, it can whiff on a lot of things, people running directly to her, but it still has somewhat of a function. And that's the point of the like that character presented to that game, which is like, look, we're making it obvious for you on how to beat things. So that was a perfect example with that move, horizontal chemical love. But like I said, like yeah, if the that move, if I was to play the game, I mean, if I was to stick around, or if they was to buff the game, I would that move, I would stay with the character in the game. But yeah, I think they don't need to buff that because it'll be hard for like a lot of newer players are in Strive. It'll be hard for her to for them to deal with. And the main thing I want to mention is the context. The context of that move for that game will be overpowered because it would just hit, bam, and she'll keep hitting people over and over again. So the way horizontal chemical love works in that game, I think it's sort of weak, but it's within the context of that game. I think it works. So for
Hmm.
anybody who thinks I want ACL to be buffed, that's my stance on that.
All right. If any players are listening to this, make sure that you add Casey is forever on Twitter.com and not me. But yeah, I get to what you're saying. Like the context of the game is mainly different. But yeah, it's one of those things where you like it or you don't. But yeah, I think I'm waiting to see what they do in October, like, cause since that's gonna be like the quote unquote big patch, and I think we'll really see what they have in mind for these characters. But right now, they're like, we mostly like how they play, but for some characters, we want to move power from this move to that move, or we're gonna buff this move a little and stuff like that. So they're just mostly like trimming the edges right now. That's why that patch came across to me. Like we're fine with the character at their core, but we just want to remove some of the little troublesome spots before we go on to the next one. That's how I
Yeah,
interpreted it.
yeah, they gave more function to like a lot in some characters, probably too much function, but they gave more function to characters this patch, right? That the system patch is going to help. In my opinion, I think what they're probably going to do is just theory is give more reward with by utilizing the system. So, say for instance, uh, maybe chemical love, if you do get the hit on counter hit, it may react a different way or something like that, right? So I think like more reward is going to be like stuff like that might happen in the system change patch, like so to like. And they say they're adding fun and depth for the game. I don't know exactly. I kind of know exactly what they mean, but I don't know how they're going to go about that. So it's going to be interesting with that October patch. But yeah, like you said, that's that patch. The October patch is going to be the big one, and it's going to touch more so on the system changes. Not really all the not all that on the characters.
Yeah, you get the feeling that they like how the characters operate, but they probably don't like the overall system. But that's just my guess as well. But
Exactly. No, I share the same sentiments. So, because look, man, people don't understand that like the system matters with these characters, right? And they don't want you to neglect the system. They put in a lot of work with the system just as much as the characters, and they want you to like. There's probably something that like people they see that we're not using a lot that they want us to use a lot. So I mean, they even mention it with some moves, literally with characters. So I'm pretty sure they're going to do that with the system patch. And honestly, I think Strive is in need for more of a system patch than a character patch. And that's why I'm like, system patches can literally change a character and just overall buff them like out the wazoo. Like, like I said, a perfect example is like you guys really need to look at Super Brawly and DBFZ. That's a perfect example. System changes can like, can you think of another game where like a system change makes like a character really strong, like just bust them.
Uh, so like from vanilla to super, when they toned down all the damage, a lot of the control characters started emerging as really good. Um,
Yeah, I played Bison. I remember Dictator. Yup, the lane
yeah,
characters were super fun and super.
yeah, when they don't have to worry about a character with 2 bars killing them, it's their tools start to shine. So stuff like that. What do you think of? Because I know, like you put me on the spot. Because usually I would actually have some examples for this. Um,
I should have asked you this before, but like, it's pretty interesting because a lot of people look past this. They're like, cool system changes. They like when they look at system changes, I think the first thing they think of is like, how can I abuse the system? But which is perfectly fine. But I think they look past the part of like, how can a character get buffed with this system? Like, what little nuances can it changes to where the overall character is just now has mad power?
Yeah, I guess another one that comes to mind would be Sam Show and added guard break. Even though I haven't really been following the game, but that changes
Mhm.
a lot of stuff fundamentally, where you could just guard whenever, but now if you guard too much, you can get opened up. And so some characters who don't have like strong mix, a strong run up, or ultimately can do better because they can just poke you down and force you to move instead of trying to open you up. And that's a system change that affects how people play. So that concept's always there. It could be like a new mechanic or a weakening or strengthening of a mechanic. I'm sure like V Shift changed a lot of how Street Fighter Five operates. So
Oh man, I see characters. Arturo with Dowsum, he's already a beast with that character. But to see him like V shift and get out of situations and like it just added more to like his move, like to the movement and just the movement alone, it added to that. So yeah, just
yeah, so pretty much. So I guess we got our last thing is big baits. Talk about the duality of having to change from a playstyle that attracted you to the character and adjusting to a new patch playstyle. So I've been thinking about this question. I'm trying to think of a specific character where they changed the way they play. And I know, and again, like before, I had some examples in mind, but I didn't think to like write them down before this, and so now I'm kind of drawing a blank. But I'm trying to think of a character where their play style was different after a patch.
the most recent for me. I actually stopped playing the character when they buffed him and patched him, but I want to think of more of a single player game. But yeah, for DBFZ, it was Brawly, and I didn't play him once he got patched because his role was like different because the system changes and how like sparking worked.
Hmm.
So like when Brawly first came out, I played him like point and everything, and I love Brawly point, but he's really weak at he's not weak, but like he's not the ideal at point. Um, so when I saw that once I dropped him and I saw people playing him last, I was like, oh, that makes sense, and I don't want to play that because I don't know. For me, it was kind of boring. But trying to think of a single player game because single player games, I feel like it's like very significant, right?
I
Because
think in team games is pretty significant. Like you said, like you have a character you're playing a certain way and you got to move it. So I think that's where you would see it the most because their moves dictate, their role in the game.
yeah, that's true. Um, let's see, what patch was very significant where it's like the place because he mentioned he's putting emphasis on play style. So I didn't play Lychee. I just like I said, I mentioned her and like from what I've heard, she was a totally different character. I'm trying to think of another.
I'm
This is
starting
a
to
good
think.
question.
I'm starting to think Bates asked this because of Balrog, a boxer in Street Fighter Five, because now he's like this, like this big rushdown bully, and not the like poking machine.
Oh wow.
But I don't know for sure. But I guess we'll talk about it because there are examples, but they're like more obscure to me. And
Yeah, they're far and few in between, right? That's another thing too. Like it doesn't happen that if it happens, it's probably going to be like maybe one or two characters in the game, right? For the most part, it doesn't happen to like the whole cast. And if it happens to the whole cast, then like everybody's filling in, and it's pretty much like a new game at that point. If it's a new game, it's probably a sequel at that point. So
yeah, I guess like this situation would be like if they had like a zoning move that was just kind of there to operate, and then they made it really good. And so now your character is based on keeping mid range and long range instead of like rushing down like they were before or something like that. But
Yep,
in my mind, I feel like that would just make them more versatile.
exactly.
Assuming they didn't nerf the strengths, because if they did that, that would make them a new character. But I guess like that's just one of those things where you kind of get back in the lab. But one, I guess the easy example would be like characters that get a different combo routes, right? Where they're the buttons they want to start combos with and the combo fodder they use is different. And so like maybe before they would hit with a certain move, go into a special, and then they would get Oki. But now what they get is something different, or they go for different types of damage and stuff like that. So I definitely see that a lot. Um,
Yeah, I guess I never really noticed because for one, if a character that I to play does change and I'm still playing the character, I see it kind of like how you just said. Like I look at the tools that he had that he can't really use too much to be like I can't use them too much, right? They probably saw it being used a lot, and they gave him this other tools in the last version, but you didn't see it. So now they patched his character, and now you can use these tools. So I don't know. I see it more as like you said, more variety, more uh fleshes the character out a little bit more instead of
yeah.
just having. And that's the point of. Honestly, that's the ultimate point of patches, right? Is they don't want you to use the same move over and over and over again. With That's an insult to them developing, right? Because they're like, wait, it's a waste of a time. We put this move in the game, it's not being used. Like what? So when they patch a character and make a move powerful, quote unquote powerful, and you've been using a different move and it's not all that powerful, it was probably intended like that, probably from the beginning, or it just was super super weak to the point where it was like it was non-existent. So they was like, all right, we gotta do something because we put in work for this move. We want you to put in work for this move too.
Yeah, I guess that would be the case where I would see this happening is where a character has like a really strong move they can rely on in multiple variations, and then they decide to like shift that power over. And I guess what I would say in that case is that that's where you have to like say, what was I really using, power move A for, and then break that down. I was using it to anti-air, I was using it to poke, to counter poke, and then and then once you write down or make a mental note of all of those, I would go back and look at the tool sets they buffed or changed or what was already there, and be like, what fills these roles now? And you just got to realize that you gotta spread your options more. But that's probably like the main case I would see that happening.
Yeah, man. A lot of people complain about that, man. They're like, man, my move doesn't cook, clean, do everything for me, man. What happened? They nerfed it. And then you start seeing somebody else play. I always see this. I'll see somebody drop that character where the move did like everything, cook, clean, wash the dishes, did everything, and then they drop the character. Somebody else picks the character up, and they add like they just come in with a different approach. And you see what the number one thing that they're doing differently on a fundamental level is they're just using more moves or different moves in general. And you're like, okay, this player has like a different approach, and they're using all these moves. They're not used to using just this one move all the time. So like, yeah, that's when you get a better understanding of like how the character is quote unquote supposed to be played, or how the devs want you like to play the character. Like I said before, man, they don't want you pressing one button all day because that doesn't seem fun for them. It takes out all the effort that they put. It doesn't seem fun for the player, and it definitely doesn't seem fun for the spectators. So
Yeah, and actually, back to what you were saying about Ladiva and how she how she got worse. So the one thing I see a lot with patches, this is funny to me, is when somebody's it's like, I'm interested in playing this character. It can be any game. And I'm interested in playing this character, but I know there's a patch coming out. And I know that this move is good and they're probably not gonna do it anymore. So I'm gonna wait. Or I'm not gonna learn this character because of the patch. Or I'm not gonna play this game because of the patch. I'm not gonna learn. I'm gonna take a break until the patch comes out. You know that patch exhaustion?
hmm
Where they're like, oh, the patch is coming in a month, so I'm not gonna practice anymore. Or I want to change characters, but they might get patched. Or the big one is when there's like some really strong thing a character can do, and they like, and it's likely to get patched. Where someone's like, and it's like 2 months down the line, right? Well, I don't want to learn this, and then they have it patch it out. It's like what, like so yeah, I was about to say something rude, but yeah, but like people will just like use that patch as an excuse not to like engage, learn, and do different things in matches. Like even if they patch it out, you understand it better, you understand the character better, and you increase your repertoire. And if that stuff still works, but just to a lesser degree, you don't have it anymore. So like I feel like there's never a demerit in learning something. It's not like your muscle memory will be shot. People act like their muscle memory will be shot forever if they learn this thing and it gets removed in 2 months, it's like you could constantly relearn these things, and the fact of the matter is we're all constantly learning even without patches because always have to put new stuff in our game, more optimized punishes and the things that we couldn't do before, and that's always going to be a thing. But people like it's like this mental blind spot when you tell them a patch is coming. We're like, well, I don't want to learn it because it might not be there anymore, and I think that's kind of a poor mentality personally.
That's pretty interesting because I always thought because I've seen cases where that happens, and then like the patch will come out, and their their move that they like to abuse, they gave like the properties of like I guess not that they took away the properties of like say for instance it caused like a massive wall bounce, massive damage, right?
Hmm.
And they just spread the properties around that particular move. They just spread that property around the character overall. So now, yeah, it takes a little bit more work, but you can still get that same function within the character. It may not be instant satisfaction or whatever or gratification, but it's still there. So that, but yeah, it's funny because like I have seen people where they're like, yeah, I don't want to, I don't want to learn this character because the patch is coming out, and it's like, just play them now, man. Like, yeah, cool, yeah, you might have this overpowerful move right now, but at least you'll have a pretty good gist of understanding the character overall once like the patch comes out because you'll be like, oh, cool, I have this. It's just another weapon under your belt, right?
Hmm.
It's like it's not you can't use it like I said before. You can't use it the same, but you can still it's still uses for it.
Right.
So
So if it's like a combo, right? Go ahead and learn it. Now obviously, like if the patch is coming out tomorrow, and you know for a fact the combo's not going to work, sure, right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm
right.
talking about a situation where that we're patching this in December. We're gonna change this character's combo route. Well, I'm not gonna learn it now, but you're still playing matches now. I've seen that.
Oh yeah, yeah. But
You
it like they just literally don't press that like go for that route or press that button in
Yeah,
that situation. Yeah,
because down the road it's not gonna be there. And like I said, if this like this Strive patch tomorrow said, Soul can't do this combo, don't learn it then. That sure.
yeah,
That makes sense. But like if there's a patch coming in like March of next year that says, well, we're gonna make sure that Eno doesn't do this route, she does this route instead. Oh, I'm not gonna learn that combo now. I've seen people do that, or see that people do stuff like that. So always, learn and update your repertoire. Learning and that practice will never betray you, even if the nature of what you were practicing changes. That's my
yeah.
opinion anyway.
No, bravo. I'm with that. And I just want last thing I want to say is honestly, it's like don't get discouraged by patches too much. If you like the game and if you like the character, just keep playing. Because at the end of the day, that's you know you obviously you like playing the game and the character. But if a patch just ends up really like putting you down bad, and don't force yourself to play that too. So, but yeah, it's just my main point is don't let the discourse on social media get to you in terms of patches.
Oh man.
Because at the end of the day, like whether a character is strong is bad, move is good and get bad or whatever. At the end of the day, still try to like if you have fun with the game overall, that's what matters. Don't like because of Sonic Fox said or because of Justin Wong said, nah, just play.
Yeah, that's the golden rule. I guess my last thing would be like learn as much as the game as possible. Try to have like a basic ongoing knowledge of not just your character but all the characters and the system and how it works, so that when patches come out, it doesn't feel that intense. Because that's what I did for Samurai Showdown. When it first came out, I made a Evernote for every single character that was in the game at the time, and I looked at all their moves and saw the properties, and I made notes of the system tool. So as it changed, as they added new characters, I could just like make a new Evernote and put that new character in there, right? Or if they drastically changed how a character's moves work, I would just go open up that character's Evernote and go to that move and update it. And so, like, if you keep your game knowledge up to date as much as possible, patches don't hurt nearly as much. That's what I found.
Oh man, I want to add on to that because with DBFZ, I play like you see it on my timeline all the time. I always play like different characters, and when a new patch came out, it didn't numb me. It didn't hit me that much because I was playing different characters. Oh, I was like, oh, that character can't do that to that in this situation. Whatever. Yeah, it's like if you mess around, like if that it's kind of a secret of mine. If you mess around with a lot of characters, you don't have to be at a high level. It's okay. You don't have to be at a high level. Just get to a comfortable level where you where you can play the character, and you have fun with them at least. And just do that, and I kid you, like what you just said. When the patch comes out, it won't affect you that much. You'll actually starting to see the direction of like how the game is, where they want to go with the game, and you'll start to be able to be like, all right, when the next patch comes out, you were like, okay, I see why that was buffed because you've been messing around with the characters, you understood the system more. So now you're like, okay, I see why this is what it is. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Sorry, I
Well,
just you made
nah,
a great point.
fully agreed, fully agreed. But I got nothing else on my mind. How about you?
Uh, stay safe, everyone. Also, like I said, if anybody wants to ask me questions on Twitter about like just philosophy of like how fighting games like the approach it seems because I have a pretty good idea. Like there's specific things that I actually wanted to be patched in DBFZ, and they actually did that to the point where I'm like, did they read my tweets or see my Twitch? And they probably won't tell you, but like the devs they will like lurk around. You know, they're not gonna go out there and tell you because for obvious reasons, but they do lurk around and go on Twitter and social media and check because we mean something to them. Without us, they're nothing. So, but yeah, if you have any like questions about like how do I come to my conclusions on certain characters and blah blah blah, hit me up. I'm not afraid to like to help with stuff like that. So
All right, yeah, all those details are in the description, like always. So if you want to hit the Twitter, Twitch, or whatever, go ahead and knock that out. Well, yeah, I'll be around too if you want to ask me anything. Uh, Not that you probably would, but if you do, I'm around. But other than that, I guess we wrapping this up. So peace out. I say, I guess.
peace, peace, everybody.